this presentation is Ophiuchus and the Galactic Alignment on the eve of 2012. So how this talk came about was in January of 2011. There was a worldwide media attention focused upon the constellation of Ophiuchus in the sky. And the astronomers were proclaiming it as the 13th sign. In that, they were directing criticism against the astrologers who were ignorant of that fact. And when I first heard the news broadcast, the story made it on CNN News and much of the public media, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, not this story again. I've heard it so often. And like many other astrologers, we said it's the astronomers who don't actually know what they're saying. In January of this year, it was Part Kunkel of the Minnesota Planetarium Society that broke the story. But several years before that, in 1995, Dr. Jacqueline Maton from the British Royal Astronomical Society had also come forward with a similar story, as had other astronomers before that. Then, in late January, I received a call from a bookstore asking me if I would give a presentation on this topic. And initially, I thought to myself, oh no, like not this again. I really don't have anything of interest to say. But I was persuaded against my better judgment and assented to it. And then as I began to approach the material, as an astrologer, I knew that the 13th sign issue was a non-issue, although astrologers were certainly calling, clients were certainly calling their astrologers and saying, am I really the sign I thought I was? Am I an Ophiuchus or a Scorpio or a Sagittarius? But what became more interesting to me that shaped my approach was, why has so much attention been recently directed toward this celestial image? Is there something that the sky is telling us that we need to listen up to and pay attention, and what that might be? So to start with, who is Ophiuchus? Ophiuchus is a very large constellation known as the Serpent Holder, and it is of a naked man who is entwined by a huge serpent that is wrapped about his body. And Ophiuchus, the serpent holder, holds the serpent's head in one hand and the serpent's tail in the other hand. And in the sky, Ophiuchus stands between the constellation of Scorpio on one side and Sagittarius on the other side. And one of his feet appear to be touching the star Antares, which is the heart of the scorpion. The other foot is upon the ecliptic, which is the sun's apparent path around the Earth, as seen from point of view of Earth. And the foot is poised immediately above the galactic center. This is the center of the galaxy. And this is the place to which the arrow of the Sagittarian centaur is likewise pointed. When we look toward the larger sky, we see that each of Ophiuchus's feet straddle the edge of the Milky Way galaxy. And the question that we're going to begin with as we explore this presentation is there any connection between what is in the heavens and what is here on Earth, which in some ways is the essence of the fundamental premise of astrology, that this is in fact the case. Plato, approximately 2,500 years ago, said in his treatise, the Timaeus, "The cosmos is a living being endowed with soul and intelligence." And this is an image of the Eye of Saturn galaxy, which is 43 million miles away from us here on Earth. And in the Hermetica, which are writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, a sage from the mystical sage from the Hellenistic time period, there is a quote from a piece I've translated. "The wise men say that man is the world because he is similar to the nature of the world." Also later from the Emerald Tablet is a quote of "What is the above is from the below, and the below is from the above." It's the notion that the microcosm, which is the smaller world, is a reflection of the macrocosm, the larger world. So we might posit that the minds of humans and the mind of the cosmos coexist in one unified field of being that mirror and reflect one another. And whenever new celestial bodies are discovered or emerge into the collective consciousness, this corresponds to the awakening of latent centers of consciousness in the human psyche. So for those of you who are astrologers, this might be quite of a familiar example. But for those of you who are not so familiar with the astrological discipline, we might point out an example of this notion. And when the planet Uranus was discovered in 1781, and Uranus has come to signify sudden, unexpected changes, disruptive shock, revolution, liberation. And its discovery corresponded to an awakening of these qualities in the collective psyche. And so at this time, there was this dawning awareness of the right of each person to be free and equal and to resist any kind of oppressive rule that inspired the American, French, Spanish, and Greek revolutions to overthrow that oppression and to fight for human freedom. It wasn't as if the discovery of Uranus caused the revolutions to occur, but the discovery of Uranus corresponded to an awakening of this notion in the collective psyche that then inspired these changes to take place. And the first time I gave this presentation was within a week of March 9th, when the planet Uranus had left its 7-year passage in the water sign of Pisces and entered the fiery sign of Aries, where it will be for the next 7 years. And of course, this was the date of the great earthquake in Japan that was accompanied by the tsunami wave represented by the water sign Pisces and the nuclear meltdown by the fire sign of Aries. And so we saw this motion of Uranus correspond to a monumental fire and water event on Earth. So taking this idea of the synchronicity that exists between celestial bodies and terrestrial experience, let's go now more closely into just who Ophiuchus was in ancient mythology. And Greek myth identifies Ophiuchus with Asclepius, the god of healing, and the Egyptians knew this god as Imhotep. And in the myth, Asclepius is born of a mortal mother and a divine father. His name means unceasingly gentle, and he was always depicted with a serpent coiled about his staff. In the ancient world, there were and continue to be the remains of hundreds of healing sanctuaries that were dedicated to him, where pilgrims would go for all kinds of healings, but the core, the pith of the rituals were the dream incubations, where people went to sleep in special chambers and received a visitation of the god in their dream and wake up either healed or with the information of what they needed to do to effect their cure.